Welcome back to PM with the Trigger on the Friday. How you doing today? I hope it's been a great week for you, and hopefully your weekend's even better. Yeah, we're back for another week. Can you believe how fast they go? More and more, it just seems time keeps speeding up and speeding up. Back once again to help you shine on camera, shine on stage, helping you with media skills because you are now in the media world. Whether you like it or not, your social media pulls you into the media world. If you got a YouTube channel, you're getting pulled into the media world more and more. And earlier today, I did a media ethics discussion. It was a very interesting conversation, and we're going to do more of that. We're going to do another follow up because questions were asked. It was very interesting what others said, but off the information that we shared during that, because there's ethics in media, there's best practices in media, but people don't talk about it. We're really not discussing the importance, the strategy, the value of having ethics that protect you, your brand. It's amazing that we're just pumping out content as fast as we can. And that's part of the pressure that we talked about this afternoon. There's a pressure to produce content, so we're not checking our facts. We're not making sure it's accurate from the different sources we get. So what do we do? First of all, it's a must conversation. If you are a content creator and you are a thought leader, knowing how to guard yourself from a disastrous ethical dilemma when you're posting, sharing, publishing media, you need to understand how to protect yourself. That's partly what we do at Rock to Stage Media. We help you figure these landmines out before you get into them. Let me give you just an example of social media disasters. I mean, there's big public disasters. Like, okay, let's just talk about national media for a second. We're going to go back to the Boston Marathon. In the Boston Marathon, in the rush to get information out, several different news sources, not just one, several different news sources gave misrepresented, misreported information, and it caused chaos. Falsely implicated people were put on the news, and it eroded the trust of the TV news entities, and it also caused stress personally on people. So when you do this, you don't check things and you just jump to the camera, jump to the microphone. It's a disaster. Social media, the same way. Logan Paul did a video on the suicide forest in Japan. This goes back to 2017. But he has a massive following on YouTube. If you're a YouTube producer, you need to listen up on that. He had a massive following, and Logan Paul uploaded a video showing a suicide victim in Japan's suicide forest. And it was not received well. It was highly uncomfortable. It was not done with respect. It dropped him. The impact videos sparked outrage, backlash to him personally and to his YouTube channel. Condemnation of his YouTube channel. He lost followers and revenue and respect, and it inevitably impacted his media empire that he was building, and he really hasn't recovered for it. Let me give you one more interesting one here. James Charles had a feud. Now, we've seen this on Twitter, now called X, and other places. Celebrities and people get in these Twitter feuds back and forth. Charles was a major influencer. He had a great following, but he got into a social media feud with a fellow beauty influencer. And the backlash, the accusation, the manipulation, the stories that went out wrong, he lost his reputation, millions, I'm talking millions of followers on YouTube and on other social media. And it impacted his entire brand. Why do we need to talk about ethics? We need to make sure we are representing, sharing content that is worthy of you and your brand, because you are the brand now. You're not just anybody out there. What you post represents you. You're the voice, the face, the brand of the message you put out with media. So are you thinking about the repercussions of what you put out? And ask yourself, am I ethical about what I'm doing? Jan's right. It's sad. that people are pumping out content so fast, we're not thinking about hurting other people. We're not thinking about how it may implicate us, our brand. We're not thinking about the honesty and integrity. And I'm a professional broadcaster. I was trained in journalism broadcaster school. This goes all the way back to who, what, where, when, how, why. Those basic things that we were taught. But are we still doing that today with broadcast journalism, with now social media journalism? Are you thinking of yourself? And I asked the question of this today with the group that gathered for our ethics and media discussion. I asked the question, do you consider yourself a journalist? Do you consider yourself a broadcaster? And there were complex faces. Well, I'm a content creator. I'm an author. I'm this. And I said, no. Are you a broadcaster? Are you a journalist by presenting the content you do now on social media? It is media. Ask yourself, are you a broadcaster or a journalist? Do you see yourself as producing content in a way that people consume it? Do they trust you? Do they like you? Do they follow you? Do maybe perhaps you have sponsors on your different streaming shows, your YouTube channels? They're buying into what you're presenting. So you're a broadcaster, you're a journalist. It's a different ballgame when you start putting on the hat and realize I have a responsibility for my viewers. I have a responsibility for the content I put out. I have a responsibility to me and my brand, and my reputation hangs on the line. Journalism is now something that we don't trust in the 80s and 90s. Absolutely true. Jan, you're 100% right. And why is that? Lack of ethical behavior shared through the media. Some of it's by accident. Some of it we don't realize what we're doing. We don't realize what we're saying. We just are moving so fast. I know the pace of being in a newsroom. I know the pace of doing a show every day, Monday through Friday for 3 hours. You always have to have content. You always have the story. You always have to have an interview. Today, our social media world has gone from being very casual to it's now pumping out that fast. How many of you have a newsletter to do today? How many of you have a blog to post? Do you have an interview? Are you being interviewed? Are you going to do a streaming talk show? It's amazing how important it is, and yet how much we think about the ethical side of what we're getting into. So think about this for a second. How do you maintain it? Preserve credibility. Number one, preserve credibility, both for you, the stories, the people you interview. You want to preserve credibility on all sides. Again, people have made up stories, and it's hard to do. We have to be responsible. Jan's following right around with my frame of mind. She's right on track here. That's it. But you have to preserve the credibility. Tell you another story here of a media giant, a big media expert at one time that completely blew that. And the dangers of what happens is Brian Williams fabricated an entire story. His renowned news anchor had a great career. Severe backlash came when Brian fabricated a story about his experience during the Iraqi war in 2003. The ethical breach led to his suspension, damage to his credibility, and he has never climbed fully back up to the heights of where he was at in the industry. Maintain credibility. Maintain that you are the source. And again, today, you are the brand, face, and voice of this. Ensure accountability. You've got to have some way of being accountable. We are now seeing journalists literally in the middle of live broadcasts. They're grabbing their phones. Hey, Twitter just reported. When was Twitter a confirmed journalism news source? When did Twitter become authenticated, confirmed? We were taught in broadcast school that you want to have at least three supportive claims that it's true. So we had to have three sources. whether it was radio, television, newspaper. And if we didn't, and if we went live with it, we had to issue a public retraction explaining we did this, it should have been this. This is where ensuring accountability, you are now a voice. You're an influencer. Media is influencing everything today. We know that. Think of yourself with that journalism lens eye now that you have to ensure what you put out there is accountable, accurate. You need to prevent harming other people. There is poison in social media. One of the biggest movements right now, one of the areas that I also talk about, especially during this school year, is anti-bullying. There is social media bullying going on at such a level now that kids are being counseled on what they're being taken in through their social media accounts that's emotionally beating them up, stressing them out. Again, fakes. All these things are happening, and someone thinks it's funny out there, but they're leveraging media to damage other people. That's not what we were meant to do. That's not what this is all about. When I coach media and executives and people, and it happens in the business world too, believe me, people have talked about bullying through social media in the executive space. This crosses all boundaries. But again, let me ask you, why are we not having the conversation? Why are we not talking about this? We are missing out on an important conversation to protect our brand, to protect our business, to protect the loved ones that we know and things like that. So do no harm. You need to fact check. You also need to be unbiased. You may have an opinion, but as I mentioned this afternoon during our live event, I talked about Andy Rooney, 60 Minutes. I used to love the news journalism segments of 60 Minutes, and they've gotten caught in some shady deals of poorly edited and poorly presented stuff. But Andy Rooney came at the end of it. Andy Rooney sat at his desk, and Andy would do a commentary. Usually a little bit of humor involved with Andy Rooney, if you remember it. Otherwise, go to YouTube, find it. But they would put on there, this is not endorsed or supported by the network. It's Andy Rooney's commentary on X. And they made it very clear this was kind of a tongue-in-cheek humor thing, but it was Andy Rooney's commentary. You need to make sure, and we see a lot of this on a lot of the cable networks and talk shows now. It's not news journalism that we grew up with. It's not that who, what, where, when, how that we talked about. It is speculative and opinionated news. Make sure I say that again. It's speculative and opinionated, talking heads debating things that they don't have the full facts and full information, and that's more what we've got. You can't do that. Protect yourself and your brand from doing that. Unbiased. Again, just the facts. Just simply the facts. So, what are you doing with yourself? How are you safeguarding yourself and your brand from protecting yourself as a journalist, of having an ethical standard, of being transparent? One of the things I recommended to the group, and you should have an ethical guidelines. You should have written down or prepared that if anyone ever asks you, what do you do, why do you do it, and what will you not do? I ask guests before they go on my shows live, tell me what we're going to talk about tonight, what are the key points you want to talk about, and what is an area that can I ask about? Is there something that's off the table? That's a guideline. That's a protective. And many interviews have crossed that line live when cameras are rolling, and they go slide that on the table, and it destroys credibility, destroys relationship. And we've seen people plug the mic off, walk off stage because someone asked them a question that was off the table. What are your ethical guidelines as you produce your content, share your content, and make sure you are being upright and ethical in everything you do and present? It's a new conversation. It's a conversation we're going to bring back. We're going to do another live interactive. It will be on Zoom We'll be talking that face to face, and I am going to bring a panel of other media experts in. I want to have a discussion with fellow media experts to see what they're seeing, what they're hearing, and bring that into the conversation. So it won't just be Trigger. It's going to be a couple other people along so we can have a great discussion with you and help you better prepare to protect yourself, guard yourself from having things go wrong. Hey, if you want to talk about this, if you want a free consultation on this, all you have to do is hit the QR code. Hit the QR code, book a call. Let's talk about your media dreams, aspirations, and talk about you are now a journalist. You are now a media person. It may not happen this week, may not happen this month, but sooner or later, this new social media world that we live in, your YouTube channel, the streaming content that I produce every day, sooner or later, we are going to have a PG, a P, an R rating. We are going to have to answer for the content we produce. It's going to happen. Right now, we kind of have a free range about it. But are you prepared for the day that this is more mainstream? And if you have that plan, that frame of mind already, that you are going to be ethical, upright, and right on target. Love to hear from you. Love to hear more of your questions or comments, your thoughts on this. Again, Jan, thanks for following along today, as always, and adding the support and the streaming written content behind the words of the day. So thank you, thank you, thank you. That's going to do it for 2 p.m. with the Trigger. I'm the Trigger, Rich Bontrager. We will see you back here on Monday, more 2 p.m. with the Trigger, and watch for your invitation to join us for our ethics and media ongoing discussion. I'd love to know what you're doing and how we can best support you. We'll see you next week.